Ollie, did it feel as lopsided as the final score here for you when you watch this game? Because I kind of feel like it didn't. The Cowboys are sort of in a situation where, to me, they're a fundamentally flawed football team, right? I mean, like they cannot stop the run. They cannot run the football themselves. And because of that, you're not going to win very much. I didn't think it was 24-point blowout type of a game. I felt like it was a little bit more back and forth than that, even though I didn't have a ton of faith the Cowboys were going to win this game. What were your overall high-level thoughts on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think you had those sequences, right, where they're trading turnovers and there's just so many penalties and sloppy football in general. The Texans really struggled to move the ball effectively for much of the second half. They only really tap on the extra points there at the end because of a short field position. And when you stack on first drive of the game, the Cowboys go for a fake punt on their first possession and don't get it and leave a short field. If you just kind of told someone that ahead of time, right, that Cooper Rush is going to drop back 60 times and there's a bunch of turnovers and bad penalties, you would have thought maybe, it's going to be a 40-point blowout in the Texans' favor. And I think to your point, some of the kind of underlying concerns about the Texans were there a little bit. And then for the Cowboys, you're just thinking, what can they do with the rest of the season that will have any carryover moving forward? They are just so poorly coached on both sides of the ball. So many errors, so many issues, almost through every single unit, honestly. And I get they were down players, down pieces, issues in the skill positions, obviously not having Dak Prescott, injuries as well in the secondary. But yeah, just all around, I thought it was a rough performance from the Cowboys, but hung in there really well, I felt, at least the end of the first half and then carrying it through to the early third quarter.
Yeah, the reason why I said that the Cowboys feel like they're just a fundamentally flawed team is because Cooper Rush, was he as efficient or accurate as you maybe would predict Dak Prescott would be if Dak Prescott were fully healthy? Okay, no, I think there's certainly an efficiency nod that you're giving to Prescott, who played an incredible season last year. He wasn't playing great this year before he got hurt, but you just expect a little bit better of I should say more consistent of a quarterback performance overall. But Cooper Rush having to drop back 55 times in this game, accumulating 350 passing yards, and there were moments where he completed some nice passes. Obviously, again, I'm not saying like he's Dak, but when I say that they're a fundamentally flawed football team, I go back to the fact that I don't know how much more you could have expected out of Cooper Rush. And this team was not close in the end. And if you substitute Cooper Rush's performance with a Dak Prescott performance, how much better is Dak really going to be here than what we saw from Cooper Rush? Clearly better. I'm not trying to say it wouldn't be. But what do you think in an extra touchdown, maybe 10 points? Because Cooper Rush didn't play terrible. He really didn't. So even with the Cowboys set up exactly the way they are right now, I'll give you another 10 points. Shoot, I'll give you another 13 because I'll count the Brandon Aubrey missed field goal. You still lose this game by 11. You would have still lost this game by 11. So to me, that's how I have to look at the Cowboys right now, because they still cannot defend the run the way that they need to, and they cannot run the football the way that they need to. So right now, I just look at this and, yeah, they're going through injuries, and anytime you lose your starting quarterback, you're always going to take a major step back. But even if you put Dak in this game last night, in my opinion, Dallas loses this football game. So it was sort of written in the stars, in my opinion, what was going to happen before it even got kicked off. And it felt like, even though I want to give Cooper Rush his props because he did play better than I expected him to play, this loss was set up for the Dallas Cowboys back in March, if you will, back in April, when they decided to not make more moves for the franchise.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, there was a poor pick from Cooper Rush. There was another one that probably should have been picked, right, and a couple of errant throws, but that's your backup quarterback. I don't know what more you could expect from Cooper Rush in that sense. I mean, he had 7 completions of 15 yards or more in this game, dropping back as often as you said, 0 run game. Rico Dowdle average minus 0.8 yards before contact, minus 0.8 yards before contact. So any sense of, we bring in the backup quarterback, right, and we're going to try and shorten the game and run the ball, and can we steal a play on special teams? Can we have Aubrey hit a 63-yard field goal and try and keep this thing tight? I mean, they got some semblance of that, right? Aubrey hits a field goal, they get the penalty, and they keep on playing and then get stonewalled on 4th down, and so you actually wipe 3 plays off the board for you there. in the same game. So I actually thought, given the circumstances, right, you got him dropping like 55 times in one game. You've got no run game. You aren't able to steal a possession. When you do steal a possession and get a turnover, you end up giving it right back to them. I thought, given those circumstances, how much the line was under attack, less so I thought early in the game, and more just as the game kind of developed and the Texans could just play 4 down and go football, and they started ripping off and teeing off and just beating guys up and down the line of scrimmage. Hunter had an unbelievable game. Barnett made impact plays. Autry made impact plays. Tim Settle made impact plays. The game to me just kind of spiraled away from them as the game went on. But I really did think from the second quarter to the middle of the third quarter, Rush played probably about as well, as good of a game as you could have possibly hoped going in against that defense going into the thing.
Any individual shout-outs really in this game? Obviously, we talked about sort of Cooper Rush and the difference there. CJ Stroud, somebody that we could talk about a little bit. There were 2 Texans players that I wanted to shout out, not just in this game, but I think season overall. Joe Mixon's got more juice this year than I feel like I've seen him have over the last 4 years. And he was productive with the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a high-volume guy. They used him in the passing game a lot. He was just on the field a ton because he had a very diverse skill set. But it felt like when he was in Cincinnati, especially I'd say over the last 2 years specifically, it just felt like, man, the volume was catching up to him, right? It felt like it was sort of just a lot of carries, a lot of mileage, and he didn't have that same juice. He's in Houston. I'm watching it last night, and like this dude, on his first rushing touchdown, he's got getaway speed, man. And I didn't think that Joe Mixon still had that in him. I thought he was just going to turn into sort of this like savvy veteran running back who was going to give you a healthy yards per carry average and some good catches out of the backfield, but maybe that explosive play number was going to be a lot further down during his days with the Houston Texans, and that's not the case. So Joe Mixon looks awesome, and then the other player I wanted to shout out is Jalen Petrie. Petrie, to me, is having a great year, and he is a player who, I watched him at Baylor, sort of this safety slot player hybrid. Is a guy that you like to give a lot of freedom to in a perfect world, right? Kind of have him roam around the field, again, in between that slot and safety level, sometimes as a robber. You know, he's looking at stuff over the middle of the field. He's looking at the short stuff. And the reason why is because he's fast and he's physical. That's what he was when he was at Baylor. The first couple of years with him in the NFL, it's tough to play that way and not have a very big wave of high variance, high play, low play, just because the NFL, it's such a quick game. You have to anticipate so well to hit more than you don't when you're playing that style of defensive back. And it feels like this year, his 3rd year in the league, he now has that football IQ. He now has that anticipation to where he is playing extremely fast and he is getting there. He is making an impact on the ball, whether it is jumping interceptions like we've seen earlier this year or like the big hit that we saw last night, which was just good football, by the way, just laying a heavy shoulder on somebody and playing the game clean in the right way. That's how he plays. And like that mentality of a player is huge for this Texans defense and this DeMeco Ryans defense. So wanted to shout out Jalen Petrie too, who I think is having an amazing year and a player who you'll love his skill set when he's able to anticipate the way that he's been able to so far this year. So those are 2 standout players that I saw last night. What about you?
Yeah, I think those are the 2 correct ones. I thought Petrie was exceptional. And the way they're using him now, right? I think what they've done to be able to free him up, what happened in the early years was an awful lot of split safety looks. He's playing more on the hash. He's playing more in the half field. And it's just not really where he's at his best. You want him rolling down and playing top down, right? As you mentioned, such a physical imposer. I agree with you. The hit last night was similar to the Tennessee play at the weekend, right? Which is an unbelievable play, physical, violent. And for some reason, they throw a flag because the pop is too loud, I guess. I think they're just going off sound rather than what they actually see and do. And so now they're playing with a whole ton of 3 safety sets and letting him just fly downhill, whether it's blitzing against the run. You mentioned just playing and sitting as a robber and having, I think, a better feel for what's being asked of him and being given more of a free role in a defense, which is pretty rare to see in the NFL at this point, and really rare with DeMeco Ryans, who does not really run all that much stuff, at least in the past. He's had a pretty clear split between this is the down line, these are the linebackers, this is the secondary, and he's carved it that way, similar to like a Robert Saleh's done. Now they're being a little bit more hybrid, as I mentioned, playing with the 3 safeties and kind of blurring the second level more, which I think really has opened up Petrie to be able to go and play downhill in the way that he wants to. And then Mixon, you mentioned, the thing that jumps out to me is just the wiggle. It's not even just, you mentioned the breakaway speed, which is correct, and it's all still the way there, but it's making guys miss. I still have grave reservations about this offensive line getting through a postseason. They've retooled pieces. They flip-flopped the center and the left guard. They've pulled the left guard out. They put Scruggs there. They put Patterson in at center. It still just doesn't function very well to me. So he's having to make a lot of people miss all the time, and he's got really, really good wiggle, fitting in 2-3 moves where usually he would just be a kind of plant and go and fire guy. And with the Bengals, it was always with him, right? He would just kind of run out of gas, as you kind of mentioned. The injuries would stack up over the year, the workload. He's so solid in pass pro that they would keep him in all the time. And as we got towards the playoffs, it just felt like everything had been squeezed out of him. So coming over to the Texans and having that kind of injury earlier in the season, I was concerned that you would start seeing it be more lethargic. You maybe wouldn't have that top end burst. So to see at this stage in the year that he still has all kind of the things that you expect from Joe Mixon, plus we're getting, I think, more of this upside than I anticipated coming into the year is really encouraging for them.
Last thing on this game, we've talked about the Houston Texans before as a team that sort of has a bad tendency to stall out, right? When you're criticizing this offense, it's sort of like, okay, you're starting hot first half. I mean, we saw this against the Cincinnati Bengals as well. It was a team where, okay, it looked like they're running away with this thing. First half, they're able to play really well. And then second half, they've notoriously, over the last couple of weeks, been a team that, man, they just can't get it going. Dallas Cowboys defense, not exactly the toughest test. Did you see what you wanted to see? Did it look a little bit better for them past, I would say the first quarter and a half maybe of this game? Did you see things in the second half where you were still encouraged? Or were there still signs of, if they were playing a better defense, I don't know if what they were doing would have been working as well. I don't know if they get up to 34 points. What do you think of this offense overall here for Houston?
Yeah, more the latter for me. They get the defensive score, obviously, which juices the figures there slightly, and then they don't put points on the board until, 4 minutes remaining, and that was a short field because of a turnover on down. So they didn't really have like a drive to score in the second half against. It did remind me of the Lions game, and I thought the early plan, obviously Nico Collins returning makes everyone's life so much easier. Play caller, quarterback, line, other receivers, everyone on the field's life is better when one of the best receivers in the NFL returns from injury and looks super explosive right away. And I thought what Bobby Slowick did really well to open the game was just the tempo and feel and crispness of what they're running. I really feel like this year, because of what we discussed before about how there's just no faith in the offensive line actually even making sure they're blocking everyone, let alone lose quickly. And they lose quickly more than any serious contender in the NFL by a long way. What he did really well was like they just got to the line quick and they just rattled plays off so quickly. Even if they were huddling, there was a couple of no huddle plays, but for the most part they were huddling. But it all just was like a now, and there was a real flow to what they were doing. And then when you get to the second half, Dallas changed slightly how they were attacking them, and it once again became this really like methodical, quite plodding type. You have one play, I'll have one play, then we'll run this play, and there was not much flow or feel to it. And it's tough really to pull apart who is that on? Is it on the play caller, or does he not trust the line? And there's certain things on the call sheet he doesn't trust and believe he can get to because the line just won't hold up for certain things. The run game can have struggles, even though Mixon's played great, because the line just isn't driving people off the ball. So that to me is a real concern, that if they can only really get things going when it's in the game state and it's flowing and it's like on their terms, that is going to be obviously problematic when they face a really good defense in the postseason.
I had it wrong, and I'm glad that you corrected me there, inadvertently or advertently. It was the Detroit Lions, not the Cincinnati Bengals, that the Houston Texans were able to get a big lead on in the first half, and then it crumbled in the second half because they weren't able to score enough points. So I think that's a major talking point for them moving forward. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.